Welcome to Module 4 of Building a Responsive Program. In this module, we're going to take a look at the early childhood standards and how they should be connected with your assessment and your curriculum and your lesson plans. When we talk about early childhood standards, we're talking about Kentucky's early childhood standards. They are divided and organized according to age range. So you have birth through age 4 that is represented within the standards. And all of the ranges of developmental abilities are within those. And each of the areas of school readiness and early childhood domains are represented, and we'll take a look at those in a minute. The expectations for skill development for that age, that developmentally appropriate practice within those age ranges is also paramount in the standards. And what's important to remember is that the standards are not an assessment tool. Now we'll take a look at how you can use the standards to help guide your assessment, especially when you're doing observational assessment, but it is not an assessment tool in and of itself. And it's also not a curriculum. So when we talk about curriculum, we are talking about following step-by-step activities that should be linked to your assessment. But again, the early childhood standards should not take place of a curriculum. The standards are a framework. So within that framework, you can create a curriculum, you can connect those early childhood standards to the curriculum that you have, if you have a pre-planned curriculum. And it should always connect with your assessment as well. But it should be seen as a framework for all of those things to work together. So it really should be guiding your choices in your planning and your assessment. So the framework should be used to make sure that your procedures are covering all of the standards and benchmarks. We'll take a look in just a second we'll take a look at the difference between a standard and a benchmark and how those are used in the early childhood standards. We also want to make sure that the framework is helping you to plan experiences that are intentional and that meet children where they are. And we also want to make sure that the framework is used again to help you plan those activities and meet those developmental strengths and needs. When you look at the early childhood standards, which are part of this module, you'll see that it's also not only divided by age range, but you have a standard and then you have a benchmark. So your standard is going to be your overall encompassing goal that you want to look at. And then the benchmarks underneath, you can think of those as objectives. So a standard is what a child should know or be able to do. It's a very general statement. And then your benchmark is more specific at the developmental level. So again, you look at those benchmarks as if they're objectives. Within each developmental area, again, we have the standard, we have the benchmark, and then what's great about the early childhood standards is it gives you a continuum and some example behaviors that fall within those standards and benchmarks. The link that is on this slide will take you directly to the standards, so you can save that for later after you've finished this training. But within this module, you'll be able to link directly to the standards and use them to help guide what you're doing in this training. You want to make sure that all the lesson plans that you do are aligning with the standards and with your assessment. So if you're doing observational assessment, it is very helpful to look at the standards and look for things that are listed within the age range of the child that you're assessing. So I've also supplied you with a form that I created that is specifically for observation when you don't have an assessment that is linked to a curriculum that's pre-made for you. If you're creating your own curriculum and you need an observational assessment tool, what I've provided gives you the standard and the benchmark, and then gives you a place just to write down your observations. And you can use this tool as an assessment tool with observation. So again, the standards are not the assessment. The assessment is what you're observing. The assessment is your observation. So just keep that in mind if you use that tool as an assessment. What you want to do is you want to record what you see happening, just as we've talked about with play-based assessment or any other observational opportunity within the regular routine. And you want to use some written documentation, absolutely. But again, it's so helpful to have those videos and photographs. You can take written documentation from the videos and from the photographs. And if you keep a portfolio on each child, keep that all together. But it's very helpful to go back and be able to watch that video sometimes to help you with that documentation. And then when you align all of those things, you want to plan for future activities based on the ongoing assessment and behaviors. So if you use the tool with the standards for observation that I've provided, you need to make sure that that's ongoing. So you would keep that that observational record for the child that you collected it on, and then you would use it again at different intervals, whatever you choose to do for your assessment time frame. On this screen, I show you just a snapshot of some objectives that are part of Teaching Strategies Gold. And I wanted to do that because if you are using this curriculum or curriculum that is similar, then you need to be looking for ways that they align with those standards. Teaching Strategies Gold is great because they've done a crosswalk. There's a crosswalk that matches up the objectives that they list with the standards for our state. So this one, I've got social emotional, and these are objectives that Teaching Strategies Gold uses for the curriculum and the assessment. And then I've got health wellness on the other side, so that you can see there are some benchmarks that show social cooperation. That's how those two align. When you use the tool that I've created, it's already got those standards in there. But you want to kind of come up with some objectives based on the observation that you take for each child. Again, this is Teaching Strategies. This is the actual, it's just a snapshot, a screenshot of a checkpoint assessment. And I wanted to just show this. This should look familiar to those of you who use Teaching Strategies. But I wanted to show those of you who are attending who do not use this, so you just kind of get an idea of how it works. When you look across, there are different levels that are represented, and you see there's a color band. That color band, children of certain ages fall within those different colors. So red is actually the first one, which isn't shown on here, but different age ranges are represented by those different colors. And when the teacher goes in to assess where a child is, they use documentation, which is listed down at the bottom of the screen. And that documentation is written, video, and picture. And they upload it into the system and mark off where the child falls on that color band. So it gives you the different levels. They give you specific examples. So, for instance, an indicator of this particular objective, which is Objective 8, listens to and understands increasingly complex language. When you look to level 2, it gives you an example of shows an interest in the speech of others. So this is great because it gives you some examples to look at if you're confused about, well, is this child listening and understanding complex knowledge? It gives you some different examples to look at to follow. With the standards, with the observational tool that I've created for you, if you do not use something like this, a curriculum that has this type of assessment, all of those standards and benchmarks are on that form for you. So you can think of it in the same terms where you're writing down observations and thinking about, objectives that fall under, that they might be exhibiting. This next screen shows an example of that form that I've created, and this is under the cognitive domain. The cognitive standard 1 explores the environment to gain information, and then I've got the benchmarks listed for you. So benchmark 1.1 is demonstrates curiosity in the environment. So then I have a place for you to record observational notes, and so you would look only at that benchmark for that square and write down any observations that show you that the child is demonstrating curiosity in the environment. You would keep that form and then use it again for the next time. If you do teaching strategies gold with the checkpoints, there are certain checkpoint dates that are 4 times a year. You can choose what assessment cycle and timeline that you want to, but with this tool, think of it in the same way as those checkpoints. You're going to use it at each interval, and you can keep the same sheet and put the dates so that you're able to compare where a child is following each interval. So I've done this tool for each of the domains, and it's just an easy box for you to record observational notes. Again, if you have video as evidence, that's great. If you do portfolios, that's wonderful. You can keep all of that in there, but this is to help you do your assessment. So just wrapping up this week, I want to let you know that in the next module, we'll take a look at the importance of planning for assessment to make sure that it happens and that you're intentional and that everyone knows what their roles are. And then there is a form to help you move from the observation and assessment cycle to actually creating lesson plans with intentional and individualized activities which link to your assessment data. So look for that in the next module. If you have any questions, as always, please let me know.